So with this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, episode 20, this was probably one of the coolest episodes in the entire series up till now. If I'm not mistaken, I could be. The name King Crimson, it sounds familiar. If I'm not mistaken, which I very well could be, this is considered to be one of, if not the strongest stands in the series. I'm going off this because I remember hearing about a stand, which I think that name corresponds with that phrase that I've heard. As well, the whole idea of time erasing, that seems like it should be up there in terms of stand power. And overall, this was cool. In terms of stand introduction, this has to be the best stand introduction of the entire series, especially with how that entire final sequence played out with. It looked like Bruno had the upper hand, and things just weren't making sense. I mean, when Trish was captured, it was like as if time kind of stopped and restarted, and we were left with, why is her arm sitting here? Which, after hearing him admit that, yeah, he can erase time, I don't know the full extent to this, it kind of puts two and two together after all these kind of jumps as if we were skipping frames in the anime, and coming back being like, why is he now here, and why is this happening in this way? Overall, I think this will probably be my favorite fight in the series, just because it's not yet, like, we just started off, and I know I say that a lot, I just think it will be, because if they pull it off successfully, the whole idea with manipulating time, it can be some of the coolest shit that you can see, not even just in an anime, but any story whatsoever, especially if they do it correctly, which this is the boss, so I expect big things from this fight. This entire episode was cool. Like, in terms of the whole time jumping, I'm not exactly sure how far they're gonna go with it, but from what we've seen right now, it definitely seems like the boss can erase time for the people he's going against, but he still retains those memories, which is why he can act when time is erased. We see that, you know, when kind of Bruno snaps to, Trish is gone, so it clearly says that the stand user has the upper hand. How the hell will you beat that? I don't know, but that's the fun thing about JoJo. They always find a way to surprise you with throwing you in an impossible situation and somehow figuring out a way to overcome it. It's not looking good for Bruno right now. If this was any other JoJo part, I would say he is 100% dead and we're not going to see him ever again. But because this is JoJo and they have showcased backstories and not killed off characters, I don't know. I'm very excited to see where it's going to go nonetheless. It was a fantastic ending. I'm glad they didn't just cut to the ending song. They actually played the credits alongside the dialogue. It was terrifying, it was well directed, the shocked reaction, the idea that Bruno actually hit a cell phone in his face so he could contact Giorno afterwards, and Giorno being like, I can tell where he is, but shit's going wrong, and entire sequence flawlessly done. And I really like the idea of having that backstory before we reach the reveal that the boss kind of betrayed his daughter, because it really shows you why he's so upset, because, you know, we get this pretty normal, pretty almost bittersweet backstory with Bruno as a kid. His parents get a divorce, pretty standard family dynamic, but essentially they're letting the son pick who he wants to stay with, and of course the mother wants him to come with her, the father obviously would want to keep his son around, and Bruno ultimately sides with his father because his father needs him to survive. He knows he's weak, whereas his mother can successfully live a successful life by herself, even if it hurts her at the time being, which ultimately happened. But then when drugs get into the mix and he's brutally shot, Bruno ultimately gets thrown into a life of crime. And I like how in this episode during the backstory, he mentions how, or the narrator mentions how it would probably be better if his father died because he would never had to get involved in a life of crime, but because people are going to come after him because he didn't die, he's forced to kill. And that was such a brutal and beautifully executed and directed scene to show you how he got brought into a life of crime and why he hates this powder drug so much. So when he learned that the boss was actually in on this horrible drug, it makes that betrayal so bad. So when he gets that second betrayal, that's when all bets are off, the gloves are thrown down, and he's ready to kill the boss, because betray him once, shame on you. Betray him twice, that's time when Bruno's going to get serious. But if this was any other stand, you'd actually think, well, the boss is screwed. But after seeing this time erasing mechanism, who the hell knows where they're going with that? Which I thought the backstory was really well done. Very kind of basic backstory in some ways, but seeing how he got thrown into a life of crime, it also explains why he's so good to his kind of underlings as a boss. It really just puts Bruno's character in another light and really makes you respect him even more than you already did, because in a lot of ways you could say this is Bruno's story, even though Giorno technically is the main character of this JoJo part. Absolutely incredible backstory, which makes that ending sequence so much better, because that build up, it's just perfect, because you understand why he's so pissed off. It's not just that Trish was going to be killed by her father, it was that he's already been so betrayed by what the boss has done once. To see it happen again and how little he cares for family, absolutely incredible. And I love seeing Trish in this episode, which my only real gripe I would say up to this part is how I feel like we haven't got enough of Trish yet. So I like this moment where she was truly scared and worried, like, what's going to happen to me? Why do I have to meet this father I've never met? Like, exactly what is going to happen? Because she's experienced so much weird shit over the past day or two. Because if I'm not mistaken, this entire part takes place over a few days. So she's been seeing so much crazy stuff. She's having her body change where she clearly has a stand. She doesn't know what that means. She doesn't know what she's seeing. And I love how Bruno kind of comforts her and being like, you know, your father has a lot of money, he's probably going to give you plastic surgery, he's probably going to give you a new name, but essentially you're going to live a very peaceful life. And how scared she truly was. This wasn't her like wanting to hold his hand in a romantic way, it was she was terrified of what her father, who she's never met, would do to her, because everything that she's experienced over the past day has been absolutely nightmare fuel. And I like that interaction because it's the type of stuff I wanted to see from Trish, just to see that she is an actual character. She's not just this object being transported from one location to the next. She is a person who's very confused, which was a very nice touch. So when she does lose her arm, I mean, granted, Bruno does reattach it with a zipper. I thought Giorno would have to do something, but it was nice to see that old sticky fingers could be useful in that situation. It was nice because it makes it that much more painful. You get on board with the rage because even though we may not be as connected to Trish as, say, someone like Bruno is at this moment because she hasn't had that much spotlight, that much time to shine, that moment was really important, which is why it was such a well-directed episode, because it makes you buy into the emotion. You understand, like, Trish is feeling horrible, and you get why she's feeling horrible. That little comfort scene with Bruno, absolutely flawless. You understand why Bruno is so pissed off at the betrayal on so many levels because of that well-executed backstory, and just that whole time-erasing sequence. It was like the final third of this episode is some of the best directed, not only from the visuals, but also the actual story and character content that we've seen in this part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And that's not saying the past episodes and content was badly directed. It was flawlessly directed in a lot of ways. That's just how strong the story directing absolutely was in this episode. I love the setup at first, you know, seeing like, hey, the boss is pretty secretive, you know, this whole disc, they have to get up to this bell tower in under like 15 minutes, and you're starting to think to yourself, at least I was, like, this boss, he seems a little shady, but at the same time, the characters mention, like, well, you can't be the boss of the Mafia if you're not this secretive. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, that actually makes sense. The boss is probably a fine guy. And then when you get the punchline of what he actually is and how he just wanted to kill his daughter himself, I'm just like, man, I probably should have went with my gut here and not bought into the other JoJo characters being like, no, I'm sure the boss is fine, he's just being a little secretive because he's the boss. I love how you have all these little pieces at play, like how Giorno gives Bruno this ladybug so it's like a tracking device, and you have like all these kind of like back and forth visual cues, like the characters are talking but just with their faces and their reactions, while the other characters, they don't really know what's going on. They probably suspect Giorno and Bruno are in on something. I mean, the fact that Giorno wanted to go himself, but then Bruno said, no, I'll do it. It's very interesting how you have all these little moments kind of building up, and it's kind of curious to think, like, what will the other characters think when the plan is revealed ultimately of what Giorno wants to do to the boss? I really like that. I really like seeing how everything was executed, like all the build-up. I love seeing the building design. I thought the building design on the interior, it was really cool. It wasn't like anything overly detailed, but I thought it was a very nice change of pace from the scenery that we've been seeing in Venice up till now, and something I have to give major props to, which maybe people won't really care about, but a lot of times when you have wider shots, you'll notice that the face details are very under-detailed, which is to be expected. I mean, if a scene's only going to be there for 5 to 10 seconds, why are you going to waste so much time on a TV production to try to detail it as much as possible, especially because it's hard to do. JoJo in this part, I've noticed when they have a wide shot, what they'll typically do is they just won't give a face. They'll actually leave it blank, which you can see in this image here with Bruno. His face is completely blank, and I actually think that's really important because the makeup team is what they're called. Essentially, they go into shots and they kind of clean it up. I like how in here, instead of giving you a couple of dots and a little smiley face like you'll typically see in anime, you actually just get a plain face, and it actually makes it come across as a better detailed design than what you typically see in TV production for anime. It's something that I really like, and I just noticed it now. I'm pretty sure it's been present up till now in past episodes, but it was in this scene where I'm just like, you know what? I'm glad they didn't detail a face here. They just left it blank, so it keeps your eye on the beautiful background and the actual solid character design up till that point. Really solid stuff. I really like the detail that this part is going for, which is to no surprise because this entire part of JoJo has been highly refined both visually, audio-wise, and also character and scripting-wise. I'm really excited for the future of JoJo, especially because we still have another core and some odd episodes to go, and the fact that we're already at the boss, like where it can go, I expect this fight's going to be a little long, maybe a couple episodes, few episodes, I don't know. People in the comment section can predict how long this fight will go down, but I'm excited to see where it's going to go because in terms of a stand introduction, it's the most frightening and most hype I've seen in this series because it feels invincible. It truly does. Like, if someone can truly control time to this degree, like we've seen time alterations in like part 3 and whatnot, but like this feels like the strongest, the most dreadful. And the fact that he is the boss, this is the boss, you expect he's gonna be the head bitch in charge, both on a power level and also on a status level. This guy is going to be insane, and I love how bad it looks for Bruno. I love Bruno. He's one of my best boys in this JoJo part. But it's like, he easily could die here, he easily couldn't die. Who the hell knows? This entire cast could die and Giorno's plan could blow up in his face and the next arc could be a redemption arc to try to rebuild and get back revenge. I don't know what this part could do, and that's exciting. Even when we see the most ridiculous and overpowered stands, JoJo in this author, he finds a way to write it in a way that makes you believe that yes, they actually did defeat them. I know people love to say overpowered, and this easily could be the overpowered stand of this entire series, but the thing and the beautiful part of JoJo is that even when you have the most impossible situations thrown in your face, it doesn't mean you can't find a way to write a way that your characters can overcome it, because that's what a good author can do. And I love how we have JoJo, this ridiculous series, over the top stands, over the top poses, ridiculous comedy, sometimes really stupid situations, but that's the beauty of JoJo. And I think, you know, a lot of people like to say, oh, it just works. I personally disagree with that statement. I think there has been points in JoJo, but this part, I feel like they are detailing the power system, they're detailing how things are working, and I expect when I walk into this fight, I'm going to say that makes sense on how they dealt with it. Maybe I could be wrong, I easily could be, and if that happens, I will fully admit that. But I personally think that a lot of the reasons that people say it just works is because of translations. Maybe it wasn't as detailed as it should have been. I've heard that Giorno in the manga, a lot of the people who read the manga, they said that his personality and charisma, it didn't really come across in the manga like it is in the anime because of the voice acting, and you really buy into his character. Some people said that Giorno was one of their least favorite JoJo characters, and now he's up there in the rankings because of this anime. I think a lot of the times when it comes to JoJo, when things just don't make sense, or, you know, they say it just works, I truly think it is just because of maybe there was a lesser translation they read, and something like that. And I truly expect that if there is issues with, say, this stand, or just this part in general, the studio is taking the steps to correct it and make it better and flesh it out so people won't come out of the anime with thoughts of it just works, or sure, we're just going to say it's so stupid, it's fine. No, I truly believe that things in this part of JoJo, it makes sense, at least for me. Hey, maybe you completely disagree with me, it's fine, but that's just how I feel anyway. This episode of JoJo was incredible. I definitely expect by the time this fight wraps up, it will be my favorite fight. And yes, I've said that a lot, but that's because the fights in JoJo just keep getting better and better. And hell, if we don't come out saying that the boss's fight was one of the best in this part, you know something was wrong, because you can't hype up the boss and not have him be a total badass, and currently, he's definitely a total badass who I both love and hate for what he did to my boy Bruno. Let me know whatever you thought of this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Did it live up to your expectations? Anime originals like myself, what the hell are you feeling about this new stand? How do you see the characters getting out of it, if they even can? Let me know down in that comment section below. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.